So Blue Beetle is the latest DC film to come out, and I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't super excited for this one. This is mainly because the movie was originally planned to be a straight-to-streaming HBO Max release, which I assumed meant a lower budget and overall quality. However, upon its release, I noticed that it was getting surprisingly good reviews compared to the rest of DC's recent flops. Not to mention, I was a huge fan of the old George Lopez show, so seeing Lopez randomly come back in a big blockbuster release was enough to get me intrigued. So after watching the movie, for a quote-unquote straight-to-streaming release, I was pleasantly surprised by how many things it did better than most theatrical superhero films. For one, the suit looks really good. You can tell they didn't overuse the CGI like we're used to seeing in most Marvel projects. The action scenes are also really well choreographed, and at times, because they occasionally stay in camera, take me back to the days when we used to get amazing fight sequences like the ones in Daredevil. Apparently, director Angel Soto did say they took inspiration from some of Blue Beetle's combos in Injustice 2, the video game. The film also did a really good job at creating a nice emotional core for itself. I like the main character Jaime Reyes, his relationship with his family, and there's even a point where the cliche main villain gets in on that. No spoilers, but you can tell Carapax could have been a much better villain if they actually fleshed out his character as much as it looked like they wanted to. And lastly, what really stood out to me about this movie is the Latin culture and setting built around it. Apparently an entire fictional city was created solely for this film, and I thought it was a great way to set it apart from every other superhero movie that takes place in the usual US cities. There's even other in-jokes to Latin American culture that I didn't really understand, but I'm fine with having it there solely because I was seeing something different. Unfortunately, seeing something different is not what I can say about the film as a whole, because although it does do a lot to make itself seem distinct on the outside, the main plot, character arcs, and even Blue Beetle's power set feel like things we've seen before. There are so many times when I was watching this movie and just felt like I was watching a worse version of a Spider-Man or Iron Man story. That is until the movie decides to introduce the character of Ted Kord, a previous Blue Beetle. Now, while in the movie he is presumed dead, we learn a lot about him and how strong his legacy was in Reyes City. We find out that he mysteriously disappeared from his family one day, and that he was kind of like a more comedic version of Batman. This is mainly portrayed by Ted's self-made gadgets and weapons, which are all fun and wacky, like a super power glove, and even a box of exploding chewing gum. So after hearing all this, it got me thinking, why didn't they just make a movie about that Blue Beetle? It seems to me like Ted Kord is so much more unique of a character than what was shown to us about Jaime Reyes, and has the potential to have a much more fresh solo debut for the character. Ted Kord even has strong ties to another C-list DC hero, Booster Gold, who is supposedly getting his own Max TV show later down the line. A Blue Beetle and Booster Gold buddy comedy film has been an idea that's floated around the DC fandom for a long time, so it makes sense why there'd be a lot of hype for that character. Now, there are probably multiple reasons why they chose the younger Jaime Reyes, Blue Beetle, to headline this movie, but if you're not even going to have Ted Kord be the star, why not at least have him be a supporting character or a mentor of sorts? I mean, when Paul Rudd's Ant-Man was announced to be Scott Lang and not Hank Pym, fans weren't super jazzed, but they at least were happy to hear that Hank was going to be a pivotal part of the film. I know they're teasing the return of Ted Kord for the sequel, but I feel like playing it safe and making this movie feel like a B-tier Spider-Man knockoff is not going to get people rooting for this franchise to continue. With so many superhero films coming out, when you make a new solo film, especially for a character that is new to general audiences, I feel like you have to act like this is your only shot and put as many unique and interesting ideas specific to the character into that story. Having Ted Kord be the main character of the film could have even been a cheat to that, since I don't feel like we get enough superhero stories about older father figures, something I still remember really liking about that old CW Black Lightning show. The director did say he has a planned trilogy that will explore more of the lore from the comics, like the Reach and the other colored Beetles. But again, why not share more of that now to get us more excited for the future rather than giving us a boring stepping stone to what we actually want to see? While Ant-Man 1 had an almost identical plot to this movie, it at least played with ideas that made the movie feel fresh compared to everything else Marvel was making at the time. Stuff like giving us a look into the quantum realm, Luis's storytelling gag, and inventive action scenes specific to the character's powers. Things that you could only see in an Ant-Man movie. But nonetheless, Blue Beetle was still a fun time, and I do really like Xolo Maridueña in the role. But if we do get a sequel, I really hope it feels like a big overhaul, and the next two movies make this the big epic trilogy DC wants it to be.